NFL Week 1 is basically in the books. It's time to freak out. Rashad Penny was inactive. Brandon Ayuk is a god. Tyreek Hill is going to have about 10,000 receiving yards. And all sorts of other chaos happened in Week 1. RIP to J.K. Dobbins. We're going to cover everything that we're freaking out about after Week 1. Maybe what we shouldn't freak out about. Maybe what we should be panicking about. And everything there in between here on Monday Night Best Ball on Spike Week. Let's do it.
3, 2, 1, liftoff.
Rob, as Alex in the chat says, football is back, and it does feel damn good. We'll say whatever we want about how yesterday and the first few days of football season and how tonight will play out. We are recording this if you're listening back later on, before Monday Night Football, before Jets Bills. But say whatever we want about how things have happened. I have some things I will definitely be tilting and some things I will definitely be holding some big fat L's on so far of what happened yesterday and on Thursday. But goddamn, it feels good. It felt awesome yesterday, even with some of the really low lows. There were some really low lows both on Thursday and yesterday. But like having some of the highs and the roller coaster and hitting on some, whether we've actually hit on anything is who knows. But having some of those moments of, oh my God, that guy that I was drafting in the 20th round or the 18th round constantly just scored a touchdown in Week 1. It felt good. It felt good to be back.
So let's start with this. Did you get to enjoy the early games? Did you get to watch them? Did you get to watch the red zone?
So yeah, I will say that's a really good one because I've had DirecTV. I have shelled out so much money to DirecTV over the years, solely not because I watch any of the normal channels, because they had a monopoly on mainly the Sunday Ticket and Red Zone, but kind of a lot of the sports packages. It was where I bought all the sports packages, NBA, baseball. I watch all that shit. It's the YouTube TV. There's one flaw, but outside of that one flaw, it was a beautiful viewing experience. I had a blast yesterday. I got to enjoy the early games a little bit more than the late games. We go on Sirius at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 o'clock my time. So kind of like second half of the afternoon games. So I'm, getting the dogs ready and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't get to enjoy and the afternoon games were pretty awesome. It was like good and bad, but it was a ton of fun being able to watch. Got the quad box up on the main TV. I got 4 TVs in the little man cave, so we're watching all sorts of football yesterday, and it was a ton of fun. Not a ton of fantasy fun in the early games, but I had a blast.
Well, it sounds like it was a great time, because if you or me or anyone that was using Xfinity Stream to watch Red Zone and channels, the fucking service crashed at 1 p.m. yesterday for 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours on the first football Sunday. They went down literally at 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock they went down. And I had to do the trial for YouTube TV. I've never used it, so I'm trying to figure shit out.
It's different. It's very different than
different.
Yeah.
And I'm like flipping between the channels because I want to watch everything. It was a fucking nightmare. I was so mad. I was so mad I gave myself the worst headache yesterday because I was so angry about it that I ended up going, once it finally came back up, and laying down and watching the last 3 hours of football in bed because I was so pissed off that you wait for this for 6, 7, 8 months.
Yeah.
And dude, I shit you not, 1 p.m. is when it went down. I had it queued up. It was 37 seconds left on the countdown for Red Zone, and Xfinity just fucking dropped. And I was just like, bro, you have to be kidding me right now. And you think it would come right back up? Nope. I think it was like fourth quarter of the 1 p.m. games when it came back up.
Well, on a positive note, other than Brandon Ayuk just being, a god amongst men, and frankly Calvin Ridley being a god amongst men, you didn't miss that much
I know.
in the early games. A lot of the early games were what I would call where the disasters happened, the underperformances happened. Of course, Christian McCaffrey was great. The 49ers were great. Right. The Falcons were as frustrating as ever. If you had Bijan, you're like, the points were nice. The usage was not amazing. If you had Tyler Algier, you feel really great. If you had just about any Ravens, it was about as disastrous of an outcome as could happen, I think, for the Ravens. And we'll get into that, of course. But the early games, generally speaking, I think were kind of a little bit underwhelming. My boy Sam Howell salvaged his day with a rushing touchdown, which was nice, but also terrifying because this was the game he was supposed to be good because the schedule is not awesome for them, to say the least. But then the afternoon games came around, and that was awesome. Those were amazing games, even the games that we didn't think necessarily were going to be awesome. Rams just laying the smackdown on the Seahawks. Obviously, Dolphins Chargers was the cream of the crop of the day. But even the other games that were in the afternoon window were like close or exciting or whatever. Patriots battling back against the Eagles was not on my bingo card. Patriots falling down 16-0 and battling back. So long story short, I think there was a lot of like kind of bad football, but also some enough fun. I think that I really enjoyed opening Sunday, and it was also really nice to be able to turn off Sunday Night Football in like the second quarter and
done immediately. Yeah, it was brutal. I mean, not to get into like home league stuff, but I was watching because we pay out the high score, and I almost sent my friend like money last night before that game because he was crushing, and he had like he still had like 5 players left, and he was only down like 10 points, and he was just playing against the Cowboys D or something. And he might lose now because of that. So it's kind of like just batshit crazy. But yeah, that game sucked. Although Pollard got his 2 TDs, which was nice.
Yeah. Pollard 2 touchdowns. I don't want to talk about that game like hardly at all because I also don't think there's a lot we can really learn from it, quite frankly. But I do think I will say Pollard, great. Pollard is awesome. Don't have to really talk too much about that. I was encouraged by the Jake Ferguson usage. So like tight end, I wanted to call that out because tight end is even more of a fucking wasteland than we possibly thought it could have been. Hunter Henry is currently the tight end 1 overall with like 16 PPR points. It's just a total train wreck. But Jake Ferguson, no, he didn't put up a big box score, but the usage and everything was really good. So I would be excited. Excited is quite a bit of hyperbole, but I would feel okay about where Jake Ferguson stands amongst the tight end landscape, which is a barren wasteland, absolute total train wreck. We'll obviously get Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews back, hopefully this coming week. But let's kick this out of the way because I kind of want this. We'll definitely have some fun and take some L's. I got a couple of really disaster spots that I don't feel very good about in my best ball portfolio and fantasy football portfolio. But I do want to get the J.K. Dobbins one out of the way first because it's just not a lot of, we can't say anything positive really. And it's super sad for him.
For him.
It's, and I have huge J.K. Dobbins bags. This isn't just me. People that are listening, if you've been following us, you listen to us at all, you were probably in on J.K. Dobbins. But also listen to Stealing Bananas, Sean Siegel and Ben Gretsch, 2 people I respect a ton in the industry, did a recap pod last night. And Sean mentioned, or Gretsch was quoting Sean, and with Sean saying that J.K. Dobbins was the most mispriced player in all of fantasy, and that was my opinion as well. If you followed us and you subscribe to Spike Week, you even whether you use or have seen the rankings, I had J.K. Dobbins in like the late 40s. Literally, he never moved from the late 40s on all sites. And at certain points, he was going in like the 80s on the softer sites like DraftKings, and he fell everywhere when he was doing the kind of hold in. So if you believed kind of like what we believed, you drafted a lot of J.K. Dobbins, and that's unfortunate. And that is also unfortunately how fantasy football goes, right? I felt really good about he was in on, I believe it was, I think Daigle posted it either like 20 of 26 snaps before he got hurt, something like that, 20 or 22. He was the guy.
We were going to print money with J.K. Dobbins this year.
He was the guy. I thought he looked healthy. He caught a couple passes in those snaps. He obviously scored a touchdown in which he hurdled over a guy at the goal line. I think it was going to be it. Obviously, he needed to stay healthy for 16 more weeks beyond this week. So who knows if that ever would have happened. But I think the thesis of the play was there. And this is just how it goes, right? If you drafted Breece Hall last year, you're very well accustomed to this. And if you've drafted running backs like
Javonte Williams,
Javonte was doing
2 years in a row for me.
Javonte was breaking out in that game that he tore his ACL. He had basically stolen every snap away from Melvin Gordon, because we learned quickly that Melvin Gordon is no longer good at football. And this just happens, right? It's the running back position. It is unfortunately fantasy football. We take our lumps with our best ball portfolio and we move on. But I feel really bad for J.K. Dobbins. I mean, this is why these running backs are doing what they're doing. This is also, unfortunately, why the NFL teams are doing what they're doing, because these guys just get hurt. And, and then you see Justice Hill and Gus Edwards step in, and they're not as good as J.K. Dobbins, but they kind of just replace the production. And, it is what it is. But, unfortunate for J.K. Dobbins, it really, really sucks. He's a really good football player in terms of running backs. I think he's probably one of the best running backs in the NFL, has been kind of every time he stepped on the field. And frankly, his career is probably over. And he
probably done with the Achilles injury. It sucks.
He's got it this year. He'll miss this year, almost assuredly all of next year. And then he'll be 26 or whatever when he comes back off of 3 big injuries. It sucks. And so, like I said, I don't want to make this super negative or post-mortem, and nobody feels sorry for you when you drafted a player who got hurt, because guess what? We're all going to have players. Everybody's going to have players who get hurt, and it is what it is. But, like I said, that's one of those where you're going to look back. We're going to look back next year, and you're going to be like, if you lost money and you took a big stand on J.K. Dobbins, were you wrong? I don't know. Some people might say, he was a big injury risk, and maybe he was. But also, if you watch that first game, the first half of the first game, you're like, oh, baby, we were about to make a lot of money on, 7th round J.K. Dobbins or whatever. And we didn't. So we move on, and we'll get into a lot of the other stuff here. Anything else on? Let's talk about the Ravens. Let's move from Dobbins over to the Ravens.
Well, just in the running back position, they bring somebody in now, right? Like they don't just stick with Justice Hill and Gus Edwards as their 2 main guys. Yeah, Fournette feels perfect for them.
So I've been torn on this one. So I don't think this one is very definitive at all. Basically, I was thinking about this with the Chiefs. I'm gonna compare the 2 situations. So on Thursday night, if you remember, I'm sure you remember. I know you were intently watching with your Chiefs bags, but Pacheco kind of got dinged up on one play or whatever. He was kind of not limping, but kind of limping to the sideline. And I'm like, oh, fuck, here we go. Pacheco's hurt already in week 1. He's fine, obviously. But I was sitting there thinking okay, if Pacheco goes down, we know McKinnon is just kind of this, right? Very specific role he plays as a running back. He's not really going to grow too much. And we know CEH is horrible, truly, truly horrible. I'm like, oh God, if Pacheco's gone and I wasn't drafting Lenny or Hunt, I'm about to get buried by Lenny or Hunt, because they feel totally inevitable on a team like the Chiefs if they were to lose Pacheco. I'm not so sure on the Ravens. I think that Justice and Gus are obviously going to be there and playing an active. Justice was the running back 2 when Dobbins was out there. He stepped right in when Dobbins got hurt and scored the goal line touchdown. He was the guy who was mixing in on passing downs and just mixing in a little bit with Dobbins. He's for sure the next man up in a role. And Gus has kind of always been a pretty good runner, actually. He's a better runner than Lenny or Kareem Hunt are. Say whatever we want about his limitations as a football player. And they did sign Melvin Gordon. And so say whatever we want about Melvin Gordon. He definitely sucks.
About Melvin Gordon signing there.
Melvin Gordon got activated from the practice squad already. They kept him around and they signed him. They also kept Keaton Mitchell from ECU. He's kind of reminds me of Justice Hill. This little guy, super explosive, but they didn't cut him. He's on IR right now, but they didn't cut him. So I feel like between Melvin, Justice, Gus, and this rookie, they kind of feel comfortable with their running back room. I'm not saying
Sounds
it's
so gross. It
it's
sounds so gross.
it's really gross, but like, are Kareem Hunt and Leonard Fournette really that much better at this point? You could argue they're better, but like by how much? I don't know. I don't really think it moves the needle. So I actually think they stand pat with those 4 guys. Mitchell, once he comes off IR. And like, I think Melvin was there, Fournette or Hunt or whatever. You know, that's kind of my thing. I bet they're wishing that like Dalvin was still around, because I think Dalvin's a little bit better than those other guys at this point in their career. If I were them, I would go calling around to like the Eagles. Like, you guys really don't want to play Rashad Penny? Would you take a 6th rounder for him? You know, like that's what I would do if I were them, as opposed to Fournette or Hunt. But I kind of think they stand pat. But that's like 60-40, 70. I don't think it's like, I'm not pounding the table saying there's no chance they signed Leonard Fournette. I think it's possible, but I actually might be a little surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly completely forgot about the Melvin Gordon thing. Until you brought it up, and then that's what made me wince. I was just like, oh fuck yeah, that's probably not great. So I don't know. We'll see. I still think Fournette or Hunt have to go. I mean, obviously there's going to be more injuries, but there's no way both of those guys are out of the league right now. Like for the rest of the year. So
no, they're waiting.
Interesting to see where they go.
This is what they're waiting for. They're waiting for J.K. Dobbins injuries. They're waiting for Pacheco injuries, or James Cook goes down, or what tonight, Brees gets hurt again. The Jets will pick up Lenny or whatever and just ride with Lenny and Dalvin Cook, the dustiest running back group.
The Jets will trade everything for Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, probably. They probably would. I do want to talk about the Ravens really quickly, because I feel like that, you see tons of reactions and everything after week 1 across Twitter or wherever. And I haven't seen a ton of discussion, other than Dobbins. I haven't seen a ton of discussion about the Ravens. And I actually feel like in terms of reactions to week 1, they were one of my biggest in terms of disappointments. I've been well known to be, not just Dobbins, the whole Ravens offense. I mean, I draft all those. I forced myself into Odell Beckham shares because I was so high on the Ravens offense. I have Justice Hill teams. I have all these dudes. They're all across my portfolio, and most of them at very high percentages, including Lamar Jackson, who is definitely the most disappointing guy on this team. I know the Texans have gotten a little bit better on defense, right? We've talked about that. D'Amico Ryans plus Will Anderson plus a good amount of early draft picks spent on the defense and some free agents. But Jesus Christ, man, 6 fantasy points or whatever for Lamar Jackson. And it wasn't like bad luck. There was a little bit of bad luck where the running backs just, Justice was stealing the touchdowns and Dobbins and everything, but he never looked comfortable. I thought Todd Monken had a really bad game as an offensive coordinator calling plays. There was one time they got down in like maybe even inside the 10, and it's second and like 4, and they run the little trips bunch set on the left side and throw a quick screen to Zay Flowers, and Lamar throws a shitty pass. You know how the screens get blown up when the quarterback throws a bad pass. Zay gets nowhere, and they line back up in the same formation and throw it again the next play, and guess what? He went fucking nowhere again on 3rd down, and they kicked a field goal. And I was just like, Todd, buddy, what about the first time that you ran that made you think that it was going to be so much better the second time? And it was just a lot of gross from the Ravens, and I really thought that they would come light it up in week 1. So just 1 week, we'll talk about the Bengals and other offenses and stuff, but I just thought we would see more excitement, and everything just looked off. You know what I mean? It just looked like they weren't comfortable.
It felt like a lot of teams were feeling themselves out for the most part, with either new OCs, new coaches, some new staff or whatever, more so than past years. Like the teams that were kind of the teams that didn't change much. So for example, the Dolphins, the 49ers that came back with like the same coaching staff, game players, absolutely smashed. Chargers looked okay. Like they were fine. I still felt they were a little bit off, and they were still kind of learning what they were going to do with
Eckler and Keenan are really good, but outside of that, it didn't look good.
Yeah, so it seems like Parham looked good,
Parham might be burying Gerald Everett, by the way. That's another guy we haven't.
which is not good for me.
Nobody is really talking about as a reaction to week 1, but Parham was basically a 50-50 split between those two guys.
Yeah, and I had so much Parham last year. So
or 2 years ago. Remember,
it might have been 2 years ago.
Yeah, that asshole never played when we all drafted him in the 18th round, and now we're drafting Gerald Everett, and he's gonna be the guy.
Yeah. So it just really felt like teams were feeling themselves out. I think the other thing that you can take away, you brought it up earlier. I'm not going to say it's going to happen all 17, 18 weeks of the season, but the Patriots getting an actual offensive coordinator, like, do they look like they're going to light you up on the scoreboard team? No, but they look competent, right? So getting all these guys late, I think me and you had like a laugh like last week or the week before because you brought up Kendrick Bourne. I was like, dude, I'm drafting Kendrick Bourne too. And that felt great. I
felt like I didn't even want to say it. I'm like, these Kendrick Bourne bags are starting to feel real heavy on drafters specifically. I'm like, well, I can't stop clicking Kendrick Bourne in the 20th round. And I didn't want to say it. And then I was like, you know what? I'll share it with Rob. And you're like, me too. I keep drafting Kendrick Bourne.
Yeah, so I started grabbing a ton of Kendrick Bourne late on drafters. I mean, I'm only up to 5%, but it was like a late thing I started doing.
Yeah.
I have a ton of Hunter Henry everywhere, other than Underdog. And so Hunter Henry, and no matter what he does for the rest of the season, he pointed out one of my best ball leaks that I need to be assured of going forward. And it's going to be tough to do this with every player. But I stopped drafting Hunter Henry on Underdog because I knew I had a lot of Hunter Henry bags overall. And like when I went and looked, my Hunter Henry bags, for example, on drafters are, I think 15%. I think it's 20% on DraftKings. So it sounds super heavy. And then I looked it up on Underdog and it's 7%. And I remember making the mental note to stop drafting Hunter Henry on Underdog. And I should have been evaluating that, right? Like making sure that I was overweight everywhere before I decided to, and just fixing that.
This happened to me. He was like my J.K. Dobbins of tight ends. How many times did we say all summer, like, this Hunter Henry price doesn't make sense. This Hunter Henry price doesn't make sense. And he never even got to where I had him ranked. On any site, he rose, but he never got even. I had him ranked still like 20 spots ahead of where he rose to, but I just like backed off. And I like you see across all. Now this is all of Underdog. I can go to Best Ball Mania. I think there's a little bit more on Best Ball Mania, but like I think it's not 9%. Updating, but like so across all of Underdog, I have 9% Hunter Henry, and it's like that's not what I planned for. You know what I mean? Right. I wanted to have 15 or 20, and I just, that was a leak for sure. A total leak. I totally agree. I did want to pull up once I don't have to have this on the screen as it loads and everything, but I was going to pull up my Kendrick one. I think I got to like 20% on drafters. So we're off to
like I said, I had 20% on DraftKings. I had 15% on drafters. So like I knew I was drafting in those places. I need to make sure I'm doing, and I need to make sure what I'm doing before I do it is kind of the lesson, because whatever he does the rest of the season, he has a significant role in this offense. He's not going to hit every single week, obviously. It's just not the way that team's going to play. But he's going to be out there. His target share is going to be pretty good, and we were getting him 17th to 18th round for the majority of the year, along with Mac Jones that you could get 17th, 18th round. Like, throughout the entire offseason, it was the best quarterback tight end stack to get all together based on their price. And Sam Howell rose up the boards. We did like Sam Howell a lot. Yep. But I mean, he came up to like the 13th, 14th round by the end of drafts. Mac Jones, there's no competition for his job, right? Like they're not bringing Zappy in unless he's injured. And Corral
Mac played fine. Mac also played fine in a pretty tough spot, tough environment. Against the reigning Super Bowl runner-up team, their defense is a little bit worse this year, but still a good defense. And falling down 16-0, and to battle back like that. What I will say about the Patriots is we're excited about Hunter Henry and Kendrick Bourne, and Ramondre caught 6 balls, and all seems fine. they're not going to throw 54 times or whatever.
No.
Bill's plan is to throw it like about 28 times. Like let's
Three
get
if you
in.
can.
Yeah, we saw when the weather gets bad, then they did throw it 3 times or whatever in that one that one game. That is Bill's plan. So I don't want to get out over our skis on Bourne and Hunter Henry and everything, but from a cost perspective, I do think
cost perspective, it's just it's going to be an overall smash throughout the year because you're going to get usable weeks from them, right? And that's what we're looking for back there.
You got spike weeks from both of those guys. Kendrick Bourne's a monster spike week, and then Hunter Henry right now is the tight end 1 overall in fantasy. We'll see what Kincaid and Conklin do and Knox, but I would assume if maybe Henry ends as the tight end 2 in all fantasy. So feel pretty good about that. I'm gonna run through some comments, and we'll keep spinning through a lot of this. But shout out Cobra Kai. He was 80% Hunter Henry in DFS yesterday, but then also not shout out Cobra Kai because he was 80% Cam Akers. We'll get to that one. I promise you. We'll get to that one because that's a W I am taking in DFS and in best ball. Breece Hall active tonight. Super excited to see how that goes. I'm not expecting a lot of fantasy points, but I would love a usable week. Aaron, just check it down a few times, buddy. I also have
another bad weather game.
Over 1.5 catches for Breece too. So please, just honestly twice. I'll take two catches from Breece. This is actually a pretty good one. Cobra Kai also says, who is Brandon Johnson and the nerve of him to be getting targets that should have gone to Marvin Mims. This is part of the risk with rookies early in the season. Sometimes you get Zay Flowers or JSN or one of those guys. Sometimes you get Josh Downs, Tank Dell playing a lot. Sometimes you get Marvin Mims, who Sean Payton basically doesn't play, despite the fact that Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick are both not there. It's easy to make assumptions about the rookies early in the season, especially when there's injuries in front of them. But sometimes the coaches rely upon the veterans. I mean, I don't think that this means anything for your Marvin Mims best ball shares, right? The thesis of the rookie was late season or whatever, but he was a late round pick, as opposed to like a JSN or something where you won a little something early in the season. But it's also slightly concerning that Sean Payton brought in Lil Jordan Humphrey on Tuesday. He just got cut from a different team. He brought in Lil Jordan Humphrey on like Tuesday and played him every goddamn snap over Marvin Mims. Yeah, and played Brandon Johnson. So even like Dulcich went down. It's gross in Denver, man. It's really gross in Denver. I'm playing Washington defense again this coming week against Russ and Sean Payton. But I wouldn't be too worried about Marvin Mims. But it is what it is.
Cortland Sutton, right? Like to me, that was the takeaway from
and
the
Jeudy.
game is
when Jeudy comes back, both of them too wheels up.
But in terms of best ball, just the price on Cortland Sutton all year, and I think we said it. We talked about the 3 wide receivers, and I'm like, of the 3, I'm obviously drafting Mims because he's cheap, but as he rose up the board, it's like the value here is Cortland Sutton in the 8th round or 7th round or wherever the hell you were getting him. It just seemed like another misprice. And again, is it a week 1 overreaction? Potentially, but we know that he's on the field. We know he's getting targets. We know he's part of the game plans. So I think Cortland Sutton was the obvious overlook in this offense over the summer.
I do think he made a lot more sense once. So like Mims really started to rise when Patrick got hurt, as he should have. But Sutton really didn't move a lot.
That didn't move.
Sutton started to move when Jeudy got hurt. And it's like, I do see that, but I actually think Tim Patrick going down was like, God, they don't have any other outside wide receivers besides him and Mims. So Sutton is the veteran who we know is sturdy. And I didn't like Sutton a lot this year. But I did buy a little bit. That was kind of when I bought back a little bit. It's like, I probably wish I did it a smidge more, but that is what it is. But I do think, just locked in. I also thought he looked a little better than last year. In week 1, and like you said, small sample. Shout out David. Again, Sundays, if you have Sirius XM, I'm on Sundays from 6 to 9 p.m. Hanging out with some of the RG guys, sweating the end of the baseball game, sweating the end of the football games, and talking fantasy, talking DFS, talking showdown, talking best ball, all that good stuff. But STL Cards, Justin Van Zuden, for anybody knows, was talking about his league where he only had Dallas defense left to try to catch the guy that he was that he was facing in his main league. And they score twice very quickly, and we're like, oh, that's pretty fun for you. But then we were also like, this also was happening to other people where they're like, oh, it's going to be down to the wire, or I feel really good. I just need Garrett Wilson to outscore the Cowboys defense. And it's like, oh shit. Oh no, this is they scored. I don't know what it was, depending upon your scoring format.
40 in my league scoring.
They
setting,
scored
so somewhere in that wheelhouse probably.
They scored 39 on FFPC. That's what I was looking at right before this. Because the team that is in, we got a chance to get second in points this week, but we can't catch the team that's in first because they had the Cowboys defense, and we had Commanders and they were fine, but when one team drops 40,
thank God they weren't on the main slate. Because
seriously,
that would have been like the grossest thing, right? The first week of DFS and you can't win anything because who knows what they would have been priced at and blah, 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 blah. But, chances are you weren't going to have the Dallas defense and they were going to bury you in every tournament.
100%. Absolutely. They were going to be 3% owned, and you were going to have to have them. Let's get to the next one, because I do want to talk about this one. The Rams. Matt mentions his 35% Kyron Williams exposure. Feels mighty fine right about now. And shout out D-Web. Thanks for getting me on to Kyron. And Jake, aka Snake Wells, dropped Kyron Saturday night to get likely. RIP to you for dropping the Rams RB1, which we learned on Sunday. And that was probably, the Rams were the thing for me. If we're going to take our L's, I'm going to take this one W as well that I'm most excited about. Certainly more than Kendrick Bourne and Justice Hill and these other ones. Honestly, I'll also be honest with you that it's a little bit of luck. I do think the Kyron one, I feel really good about the whole process of getting there with Kyron, because I think the thesis was, look, dummies, he got to play last year in week 1, like in a very real role over Cam Akers. The Rams clearly don't love Cam Akers. Cam Akers is also not that good. And we saw all offseason that they told us, like, no, in camp, Kyron's getting time with the ones. Kyron is playing in passing downs. Kyron never played in the preseason, which is like bells should be going off with Sean McVay when the guy doesn't play in the preseason, that they are in a real role, because that's what he does to starters. If you're a starter, you don't play in the preseason, point blank period. That happened to Tutu, and that happened to Kyron Williams, that were kind of shockers to all of us. Once that happened, I started smashing those guys. So something to think about for next year with the Rams, but also part of the thesis was I thought the Rams were going to be really bad. So that may not end up being necessarily true. So kind of one of those things where you're wrong, but end up right. But I think the Kyron Williams thing was something that if you've been paying like super close attention, you got onto him. And yeah, he ended up kind of across all sites being my highest owned running back, because I didn't really draft a ton of Damian Harris and Rashad Penny, who are my highest owned, and I guess him and Dobbins. Dobbins for sure is right up there. But feeling really good about the Kyron Williams thesis, kind of no matter how it plays out the rest of the year. I think we saw getting that guy. He also is like not even 100% drafted, right? Like if you drafted on BBM or the DK Millie stuff that was open all summer, he wasn't getting drafted at the beginning. So like, man, to get a guy that's like, I don't know, 50% drafted, 60% drafted, maybe across the tournament, and getting him in the last round, and he's, at worst, the 1B, probably the 1A in this backfield, certainly from a high value touch perspective. He's getting passing downs and goal line work. Just feel really good about Kyron. And then, man, I couldn't have been more wrong about the Rams, but I'm sure happy that I was, because that offense looked good, man. Like Puka
looked good.
Sorry, someone goddamn calling me. Why does this always happen when I'm on the show? Puka looked absolutely for real. Tutu, I thought, looked really, really good too, like a much more diverse wide receiver than we think for this, 140 pound dude. And Stafford is still good. Spoiler alert. Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay Stafford was balling, man. So I still think the defense is bad, despite the fact that they really shut down the Seahawks yesterday. And if Stafford can stay healthy, you're going to get cut back in a few weeks. This offense, I think we're going to be in for a
You think they're going to get cut back?
If they get cut back in. If they don't, okay, you're good. You're going to print on Puka and Tutu and Kyron and stuff. probably Higbee. But if they do get cut back in a little while, I actually think Van Jefferson might go away. Like, I don't know how you bench Puka and Tutu for Van Jefferson in a month when Cooper Kupp might come back. So kind of my takeaway.
They've always tried to get rid of Van Jefferson though. Like that, they've made it a point that like there was the Allen Robinson experiment, there was the Odell experiment. Like all of the time, it's like just to keep reducing his role. He just ends up staying with the Rams. I have to thank you for getting me on Kyron Williams, by the way, because I was not on him, and my exposure across the 3 sites kind of tells the story of that.
Same for me.
I did a lot of my so I think we're reverse for the most part, kind of. My DraftKings was drafted a lot earlier, and I kind of stopped drafting on DraftKings. I have 2% Kyron Williams on DraftKings. Underdog was kind of a flat draft across the year. I have 8%. And drafters, I have 15% Kyron Williams. So you kind of see the story of like when you got me on him and how that rose across the other 2 sites. And it could only rise to 8% on Underdog, but because I was hammering all drafters drafts late, I got Kyron quite more significantly than I did on the other sites with the 15 or 16% exposure, and there's good and bad to that. The bad part is I was getting Dobbins on drafters. I have 35% Dobbins or something like that on drafters. So that's because that's when the price dipped and I thought it was the best value. So there are peaks and valleys to this. But one of the peaks is Kyron Williams late on those teams, and there's probably a significant amount that are J.K. Dobbins teams. So it's like, yeah, this sucks, and the draft capital sucks, and it probably overall sucks. But at least I got the piece that can kind of lift it up. Hopefully, some of these weeks, and it did week 1.
It's funny you say that because I've been like happy, but also lamenting that like I'm gonna get dusted on Underdog. I think because all the guys who ended up becoming the hits that I was lucky enough to get onto were guys I got onto, in the last month or something like that, from training camp, like later in training camp, preseason on is when I really got onto these guys who ended up kind of being more of the hits. I didn't know about Kyron. Like nobody knew about Kyron Williams in May and early June and stuff. And I was drafting on Underdog, specifically, of course, Best Ball Mania and some of their early tournaments then. So like I have 8% Kyron Williams across all of Underdog. I have 46% Kyron Williams on DraftKings and 42% Kyron Williams on drafters. But it was like you said, I'm drafting DraftKings and drafters later.
Late, yeah.
We find out about Kyron Williams a little bit later. And I knew, right, obviously in my head, but also using our Draft IQ tool, like I don't have that much Kyron on Underdog. If I'm going to get him, he also made more sense, I think, on DraftKings. He made sense everywhere, but kind of as a pass catcher, he made a little bit more sense on DraftKings and drafters. And so I was just like, I'm just going to take him in like every draft. I'm just going to take him in like every draft, basically, on those 2 sites. And so I feel good about that. And it's not a pissing contest. Cool. Liam knew about Kyron. I mean, we all knew about Kyron. Like, I drafted him last year and we knew about him, but I don't think anybody knew he was the backup. I don't think the Rams knew he was I don't think the Rams knew he was the starter. I didn't know he was the starter, but we found out he had a role during training camp. Just to hit some of these, I do want to point this out. Like I doubt Miami will maintain their God status. Of course, that's how week 1 works. I mean, Tua's not going to throw for 500. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Tyreek Hill's not going to have 215 receiving yards every week, and Tua is not going to throw for 500 yards. But I think there is a good sign in week 1. Also, Sean and Gretch pointed this out that I thought was a really good point, that we know Tyreek and Waddle are really good at football. What was most fascinating to me from that game was the other guys stepping up and like helping them move the chains and help, right? Like River Craycraft and Braxton Berrios and Durham Smythe, those guys stepping up and being able to be like, oh shit, it doesn't have to be Tyreek and Waddle every goddamn play, which last year, that's kind of what it was. And this year, I'm not saying those guys are great, but they might be just good enough.
I thought Craycraft looked good, though.
I think so, too. I thought they all looked pretty good. Even Durham Smythe, who runs like a 5 flat 40, was getting open. And so I just would feel, the only concern is probably Tua. And they're not going to, of course, no one scores a billion points every week, but I think you should feel confident in your thesis of your Miami stuff. And you still can't trust I mean, I don't know what McVay's ever done really to say we can't trust him. He kind of he actually is one of the guys who, when he had Todd Gurley, we're riding with Todd Gurley. He's shown us he doesn't love Cam Akers. He's shown us he likes Kyron Williams. Like, what else is he going to do? I don't know why he would change unless somebody gets hurt. What happened or what he did in week 1 worked. So again, is Kyron Williams going to score 2 touchdowns every week? Of course not. No, he's probably going to, they play the 49ers this week. Spoiler alert. Rams are probably not going to score a lot of fantasy points in week 2. Yeah. So enjoy week 1. We'll get back at you in week 3, because they're not going to do anything this week. But I think they showed us to go out there. Puka had 15 targets, fellas. 15 targets. That doesn't happen by accident. That doesn't just, you don't just oh, ho hum, you stumbled into 15 targets in your first game as an NFL player. I think he's pretty good. He looked good. So yeah, I don't think it's an overreaction to be all right, feel pretty good about the Rams. Could they end up sucking? Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Seattle
could just be bad.
Oh, 100%.
Because their secondary, I already think was not that great, if I recall from last year.
The boundaries are supposed to be pretty, the whole thing, this is actually why I played Puka in DFS yesterday, was the whole thesis was the boundary guys are supposed to be pretty good, and they're supposed to be they got bludgeoned over the middle of the field. Well, Puka ended up kind of taking more of the slot stuff, right? But they ended up kind of just sucking everywhere. They just got torched by Stafford. And like you said, they may just suck, and there's going to be ups and downs. The Rams offensive line is terrible. I actually really like the 49ers defense this upcoming week, but that's the NFL. We're trying to assess week 1 and be what's something to be excited about from our draft process moving forward. And I 100% think the Rams were a good one. Same thing with the Dolphins. But there are some ones pivoting a little bit.
Before we do this pivot and we're answering questions, I just want to point this out real quick. Hacker brought up that a bunch of 18th rounders smashed, and you could have just skipped the rounds 14 through 16. And we talked about this on a couple shows over the summer where, if you're allocating a budget for each round, basically round 14 to 18 is all $1 players for the most part. You should, in my opinion, not every single draft. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying to do this every draft, but grabbing some of these late guys, if you like them just as much as you liked some of these 14th, 15th round guys, you should be making yourself do that. And the way I can, and it's not the same exact thing, but going back to the Ravens really quick, I had a big problem in the beginning of the year where I was just grabbing Bateman as my Ravens wide receiver over and over and over and over again because of the price. And I had to physically make myself start taking Zay Flowers. And I'm way overweight Zay Flowers now too. But once I started doing it, it became much easier to do. It's real weird. It's how it works though, where you have to train yourself to start doing this shit, in order to break that habit of taking certain players, certain places. But in those late rounds 15 to 18, say you don't have to include 14. Yeah, if you liked Puka a lot, or Keontae Ingram, will say, just to throw a name out that didn't do anything, and you wanted both of those guys. Oh, and you wanted Mac Jones to go with Hunter Henry. If it made sense for your team to grab Hunter Henry in the 15th, Mac Jones in the 16th, Keontae Ingram in the 17th and Puka in the 18th, just do it. If it fits your team and that's what you want to be drafting, don't do it every time. But now you already have a different team than everybody else mixed in with the people that you're drafting early. So I just wanted to point that comment out real quick.
Totally agree. And this is something I don't think I've done very well historically, but I think I did much better at the end of this particular draft cycle, where I also think it's harder earlier in the summer where you have a little less conviction about the later round guys. Once I got the conviction on my guys late, right? I had a pool of guys. It was, of course, those 3 Rams guys. I'm trying to think of Evan Hall. I was also taking Deion Jackson. Then he shot way up. But I'm trying to think of, a handful. Kendrick Bourne that we talked about, Justice Hill, Travion Williams, and some of these guys will be hit. Josh Kelly, right? We got news that Josh Kelly was the backup. They were all like last round picks. And so, like you said, I did this. I probably was a big reason why Kyron Williams ADP rose so much on like drafters and DraftKings, particularly on drafters, because I was doing this. I'm like, it's the 15th or 16th, and I want Kyron and Tutu and Puka and Josh Kelly and whatever and Evan Hall, and they all go at pick 220. How do I get them all on the same team? Well, I got to take one at pick 160 or whatever. You know what I mean? And so, and just wanted to show that this is just in the $20, but you see my exposure with Kyron Williams. Let me scroll up. You see, they had very similar ADPs, and they're on the same team. Now, Evan Hall already hurt, doesn't look awesome for that thesis, but you see the point, right? Let me scroll down a little bit more. Cole Turner, obviously a last round pick. I have Cole Turner on 28% of those teams. Deion Jackson on 27. Here's Puka, right? 25%, 25% Tutu, right? 23% Tank Dell. These are all like last round picks, and they're all paired together because I did do this on drafters. And so I feel, we'll see. Long season again. We're doing this show to obviously have fun and react to all this and take some W's, but it's really trying to assess the process. And I do think that part of the process I feel good about, because it was a little stale from like rounds 14 to 18 or whatever. And I think by the end of the draft cycle, we did see Kyron, Josh Kelly, the Colts guys, all these guys were mispriced. So like just take them in the 14th or 15th because they're just as good as the 14th or 15th round guys.
Devin Singletary, 14th round guy, 15th round guy. I mean,
why is he better than Kyron? Why is he better than Kyron?
Or why is he better than Josh Kelly? Right?
Yeah.
So why can't we bring those guys up? We always talk about bringing guys. I talk about it more so in the first round. Let's bring these guys up to get some different roster constructions. Here's another way to do it at a much cheaper cost. And in the end, it doesn't matter. Now, Devin Singletary can still outscore all these guys throughout the thing. And we're not saying to do this every single time, but this is one of those things that I think can give you a gigantic edge by grabbing guys that are all essentially the same player. They're all $1 players in auction leagues for a reason. They are all $1 players for a reason.
Yep.
So just move some of these guys up, get yourself some different rosters, and that's how you're going to win, specifically on something like drafters or whatever, like where you're doing cumulative scoring.
Really huge on drafters with cumulative scoring because everybody's going to have a lot of those guys in the X rounds. Nobody is going to have Kyron and Kendrick Bourne and Justice Hill and whatever, right? So like everybody's going to have everyone. Tyreek is drafted in every draft on drafters. Brandon Ayuk is drafted in every draft. Even Jacoby Myers is drafted in every draft. How do you, even if you hit the nuts out of what did it finish with 85,000 people on drafters or whatever we'll just call it 90 out of 90,000 people. You hit the nuts, right? You had Tyreek with Tua and Jacoby Myers and Brandon Ayuk. Now, how do you beat? There's going to be other teams. There are several of them at the top that have all those guys. Let's just say they continue to be the nuts, right? How do you beat them? It's like, well, they might also end up with one of Kyron Williams and Justice Hill and Kendrick Bourne. How do you beat them? You get all those 19th round smashes on the same team. And now he has Devin Singletary and whatever shit bums that were going in the 16th round. And you have all the guys who Josh Kelly, right? Justice Hill, you have all those guys on the same team and you're just going to lap those other guys. You can also make up ground. Like, oh shoot, you have Tyreek, but you don't have Ayuk, and assume that they're both hits. You can make up ground by having all the hits from the late rounds. So I really like that one. Steven, we're not probably going to be hitting waiver wires. We're mostly focused on best ball, but I do think you can take away some of the stuff from the Rams and Justice Hill. I'll just throw those guys out there. Kyron, Justice Hill.
Well, we can also segue this into a victory lap for myself if you would like.
Of course.
My biggest victory lap of the entire week one situation is Kenneth Gainwell is probably your number one waiver wire.
Fuck.
Pick out of everybody.
We're both going to go to war over this because this is my biggest L of the whole goddamn show, and it's your biggest W.
It is my biggest W by far. Rashad Penny. I laughed. I sat on my couch and I fucking laughed, Eric. And I usually don't swear on the show. I try not to. because of reasons. But god damn it, did I laugh when I saw that he was, and I was messaging you guys because I'm like, I tried to tell you about Rashad Penny, and I know it's week 1 and people can get hurt and shit can happen, but yeah, they don't like Rashad Penny in Philly. They don't. They're like, no one likes Rashad Penny anymore. He's done. We gave this guy too much leeway. He I don't know what it is about the community. We have all these rules for running backs and all these positions and stuff, but occasionally we do these like little outlier things where like we don't read what's in front of our face. And I've been trying to be better at that. It's why I was only drafting Jahmyr Gibbs on full point PPR sites, because I thought Detroit was telling you what their backfield is going to be. Now I think Gibbs is going to get more work as we go forward in the year, to be honest, but I still like the way I played that overall completely. But Rashad Penny got cut by a team that focuses on the running game. They're saying that he's not good enough to play for them anymore. He goes to Philly. The Eagles get this gift with DeAndre Swift. They already love Kenneth Gainwell. They love Boston Scott because he beats the Giants twice a year. Like, who was going to be the odd man out the whole time? Like, I thought there was a chance he got cut because of it, but he's the healthy scratch now until injury happens. So, and you guys were taking him in the 11th, 12th round. Like, it just seems so obvious, like, to me. Now there's outcomes to where he still gets in, but even when he gets in, Jalen Hurts rushes for 12 to 13 touchdowns a year. Even if he reduces it down to 10, the Rashad Penny bags were just bad, in my opinion, by everybody. Like, really, really bad.
Yeah. See, I have no pushback on all of that. But first of all, you didn't know who the starting running back was. So let's not do that whole thing. That the Eagles didn't even talk about who the starting running back was. They listed all 4 of them actually as starting running backs. The thesis of Rashad Penny actually really had nothing to do with any of all that news and stuff, which also the news was bullshit. The news was that he was going to get cut. I don't know if you can hear that. I think that's a tornado siren going off. So that's fun.
Good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Go ahead and talk for a second.
So, to Eric saying that we didn't know that Gainwell was going to be the starting running back, I'm going to say that I knew that Gainwell was going to be the starting running back based on my ownership of Gainwell across all the sites where I have him at, somewhere between 15 and 24% per site. To be honest, I didn't know Gainwell was going to be it. I just thought he was a great value towards the end. But
I agree. I will step in and say I wasn't taking Gainwell at the beginning of the summer, and then I was taking Gainwell at the end of the summer. So I feel totally comfortable in like my whole process with the Eagles. When I actually don't dislike the thesis behind the should have faded Penny. I think Swift was the worst pick out of all of those guys. Like, if you want to say we can't draft any of these dudes, why was Swift going in the 70s? Right? Penny was at least going in like especially by the end, going in like the 130s, 120s, 130s, whatever. And Penny was the reason behind Penny was not that he's the starter, was not that we had any certainty around all this kind of stuff. It was they have 4 running backs. Boston Scott is a special teamer. DeAndre Swift can't run between the tackles. The Lions won't let him run between the tackles, and all he does is catch passes on a team who doesn't throw to their running backs. Kenneth Gainwell is the incumbent, who's really more of a pass catcher. He's little, not really a run between the tackles kind of a guy, but they trust him. They keep him around. They clearly like him. So I definitely have nothing negative really to say about Kenneth Gainwell, other than I don't really think he can be a workhorse. He played 60%, 62% of the snaps yesterday. He got most of the touches, but I'm not sure that he can be a total workhorse. Does not mean he's not going to be a fantasy smash, because I would feel very good about my Kenny Gainwell bags right now. But the thesis behind Rashad Penny was he's the only guy in that whole backfield who was a really, really good between the tackles runner on a team who runs the ball and runs in between the tackles, and just gave Miles Sanders like 1 billion touches for how many years. And Miles Sanders sucks. Miles Sanders is not very good. Rashad Penny is a better runner. The risk of this, always there, 100% always there. But the upside was, holy shit, Rashad Penny's getting 18 carries a game behind the Eagles offensive line. He just takes Miles Sanders carries, right? And Gainwell is the other guy taking the passing down work or whatever. It's like, I think it's weird that we're dunking on Penny just because he was inactive when, okay, Swift was active, but what the fuck did Swift do? And he was going in the 70s. Like everybody just anointed DeAndre. Why was DeAndre Swift going in the 70s? At least Rashad, they had the same ceiling. DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny did. Same ceiling. One guy went at 120 something, and the other guy went in the 70s because of what? His name? Like I didn't really understand the Swift thing. Other than we're continuing to hold on to his name as well.
I'm not disagreeing with that either.
I can definitely appreciate, and I am here to, I was stating the case for Rashad Penny. The case was the ceiling. Oh, that's it. The floor was this, and it felt fucking horrible. And the moment I got the Rashad, I had the inkling it was coming all week. And you're just like, please, just like the Andrews. I just had this bet. They kept talking so positively about Andrews, but then he kept never practicing. And I'm just like, this doesn't feel right. And the same thing with Penny. I'm like, this doesn't feel good. They're not going to have all four of these guys inactive. And it was him or Swift. It was going to be him or Swift that was inactive. And I'm like, I just fucking know it's going to be, I'm like, I know this is going to be Penny inactive. And of course he was. It's not good. I mean, there's no way to like really beat around the bush.
He's also 27. And like that was another thing that I was thinking of when we were doing this Rashad Penny thing. It's like, we just always hear about like 27, 28-year-old running backs that's kind of it for them. That's the age that we're looking for them to be pretty much done. I think 28 more than 27, but it's right there. And it's like the dude that couldn't stay on the field, the dude that isn't wanted by Seattle, the Eagles, as soon as they can make a trade for Swift. And I know like the profiles are different and all that fun shit, but like even the Eagles kind of told you like, yeah, we'll keep him because if we can use him, we'll use him. But we really like Kenneth Gainwell. We really like Boston Scott. And if we can do something with Swift, my only pushback on Swift is a very flimsy argument where it would be, even though I think he was wildly mispriced, like he was not going where he should have been going. And I do think it was on name recognition and excitement over him going to the Eagles offense, which to your point, not one of the better offenses for him to go to. Just overall
with his skill set, right?
With his skill set, like
he could go, just if he went to the fucking Chiefs, you bet your ass I would have been drafting DeAndre Swift, but he didn't go to the Chiefs, right?
Right. So like it doesn't add up. The only thing that I would say is like the likelihood that he has a 20 to 25 point game or two, I think is a little bit higher than Penny. So I was willing to draft him just a little bit. Like Hacker brought it up in either, I don't know if it was our private chat or if we were doing it on Discord. But he's like, so show your Swift bags. I'm like, well, it's 8%, but here's my fucking Gainwell bags that are over 20% on every single site because like, I'm just going to bet on the cheapest one of them. Right. Like, and that was the lesson that I gave myself. I'm like, just bet on the cheapest guy because Gainwell's going to have a role. No matter which one it is, Gainwell still has a role. I didn't think it was going to be this. I'm not going to sit here and say that's what I thought this was going to be unless one of them got hurt. But
that's the big one.
Seemed easy.
That's the big one, right? Where I think it's also not always the cheapest one because Donta Foreman was the cheapest one, and he's dusted already in the Bears backfield. It's Roshan and Herbert, but Jeff Wilson was also the cheapest in the Dolphins backfield, and he's hurt, but so who knows? But Devon.
But you're also talking about older guys too, right?
Right,
that are the cheaper ones.
But with Gainwell, to your point. What I also think sort of clicked for me, and I have 2 points. One to add to this was that he was always going to have a role.
Yes.
No matter what happened with Penny, no matter what happened with Swift, Gainwell was going to have a role. So that is the small miss, probably big win. What we're seeing now is the big win scenario where he is the lead. The small miss was, okay, so he's Gainwell of the last 2 years. He's going to have a couple good games. He's always going to be out there, and he's going to have the contingent value if something happens to, right? Let's just say Penny was the Miles Sanders of this year. Gainwell will have a role, and he's going to have contingent value. That is why I think he was such a slam dunk, and I wish I would have got on him much, much earlier. It's because of that. The combination of all those things for Gainwell was just such a freaking slam dunk. And I hate myself for like, I was 100% enamored with holy shit. Rashad Penny's one of the best runners. And if it works for him, this is a fucking home run, like, especially on underdog. I am happy that I did it mostly on underdog because I think he was a better underdog pick because he's never going to catch a pass on the. I mean, he's literally never going to catch a pass on the Eagles. So feel better about that. The follow up to that, where I think where I've totally kind of landed with the Eagles and why the Gainwell thing is kind of happening. Of course, I could be wrong. I'm speculating. He is the guy who I think they believe when he's in the game, he can do it all. Now, he's not a very good runner, like in between the tackles or whatever, but he's a pretty decent athlete. He was a good receiver in college. He actually kind of played a weird hybrid role, kind of like a Tony Pollard. Then he eventually took over the workhorse running back role, but he's a good receiver. So if Penny's in the game, right, you're probably not going to throw it, or he's at least not going to be a part of the passing game. When Swift is in the game, you're not going to run it between the tackles because he can't run between the tackles. When Gainwell's in the game, you can do anything. The whole playbook is open to you. You're not giving it away. You're not giving away to the defense what is happening. And like that shit is important. You know what I mean? And I think that was a little bit of something I've percolated on over the last couple, since yesterday, basically, where it's like, this does make sense from a football perspective, even though I think Kenny Gainwell is like the shittiest option for them as a in between the tackles runner. Penny is that guy. It's kind of offset by the fact that when you're out there, you're not giving away to the defense what you're doing, or you're not limiting, right. Like you're not throwing a screen to Rashad Penny, so the defense never worries about it. But when Gainwell's in there, you got to cover every inch of the field. You know what I mean? And that is important from a real life football perspective. So just all these things are, we're going to store in the back of our brains for next summer. Whether we hit them, whether we missed them, how they work out like you said, I mean, Gainwell could get hurt. Like shit happens. Penny could turn around. Swift could turn around. Who knows? Anything can happen. But I think from a thesis and process perspective, we've learned a lot, I think, through the whole Eagles shit show.
But I am going to victory lap the shit out of this right now and just show off my underdog Kenny Gainwell exposure. Just in Best Ball Mania, 25% with an average ADP of 168.
Love it
on him. So felt great. I'm going to say it felt great.
Love it.
That made me happy though the other morning.
Couple more minutes and we'll get out of here so we can all go watch the game. I wanted to point out just a couple of quick guys off the top of my head that I'm reacting to that are not necessarily super as obvious or whatever. Nick Chubb, if you drafted Nick Chubb, he was fine in the box score, but not amazing, but I would feel awesome. The thesis behind Nick Chubb going where Nick Chubb was going was his role was going to expand this year. And if you go look at the box score, it may not totally look like it because Jerome Ford had 15 carries. Like 9 of them were like the last 9 plays of the game when it was totally out of hand. And Nick Chubb had 4 targets. He is a workhorse. He's a superstar. He's going to be awesome as long as Deshaun Watson doesn't tank that offense. Travion Williams came back for the Bengals and looks like he probably took the number 2 job back away from Chris Evans. He played 29% of snaps. Evans played 12 or something. And it was not garbage time for them. Joe Mixon was out there. They pulled Joe Burrow, but they left It's like they want him to get hurt or something. So Travion there. Derrick Henry got outsnapped by Tyjae Spears in a close game. That was weird. I think it was probably a little bit just like fluky-ish. They couldn't run the ball, and Tyjae's, a little bit more of a gadgety passing down type of a guy. But something to monitor. I would be monitoring that. I wouldn't be excited about it for Derrick Henry, but I'm not gonna panic. The Bears suck. I know Jake the Snake.
They're gonna trade Henry, aren't they? They're gonna trade Derrick Henry.
Probably. I want to see Henry on another team and see how it goes. He could bury me, but I would like to see. I'm just sick of this Derrick Henry Titans bullshit. And I also would like to see the people who are drafting Derrick Henry just because he plays the Texans in the playoffs. I would love to see that thesis go to shit. Because that
he goes to amazing. A good team if he gets traded is the problem.
Yeah, that is true. And then there was one more that I was going to mention, and I'm totally blanking. Oh, the Bengals. We haven't talked about the Bengals. Definitely not panicking about that performance, but I'd be lying if I said I was excited about 82 passing yards from Joe Burrow, despite the weather.
Yeah.
Horrible weather. But Burrow, I don't know. Does he have really small hands, or I don't know what's going on?
I think they were protecting him because if you look at Reeves, he posted a stat today where their first down pass rate was like 29%, and the league average is like 49% or something like that. So it almost felt like they were just like, if we can stay in this game, we stay in this game. If it gets out of hand or something, just run the football and get the hell out of here type of deal. I haven't looked at all the stats. I didn't watch a lot of that game, but it just felt like based on stats like that, they were like, he's not 100% yet. Let's just do what we can. That's easy and get the hell out of here and on to next week type of deal.
Yeah, it was bad. It was almost one of those where it was so bad I don't have like a takeaway, you know, like the Ravens were bad, but still scored 24 points or whatever. So like you watch it and you're like, God, that was 24, but it was gross. The Bengals were so bad. It's like, I just want to throw that one in the trash. And
same with the Giants.
They do the same thing with the Giants. You throw it in the trash. The Giants play the Cardinals this week. The Bengals play the Ravens this week. Those should be bounce back spots for both of those teams. You know, if it doesn't go well again, like if the Giants can't score on the Cardinals and the Bengals can't score at all this week, maybe we'll reassess on this show next week, but I'm not worried about it. To hit the last couple questions, ML says, can we talk about Adam Troutman? Could be sneaky given Dulcich is banged up and Troutman is a coach favorite. Yeah. Not like super excited for Troutman, like in best ball from an upside perspective. I have like a couple teams where you just got totally locked out at tight end, and I have Troutman, like maybe 2 or 3 total. But yeah, I think totally fine. Like if you need tight end help in a league or something, you know, FFPC maybe probably more so. It's fine. He's going to play. They don't have very good wide receivers. And I agree that Peyton loves him. He's not a very good pass catcher, but like, I don't know. I could see like a Will Dissly season from Adam Troutman there to make a Russ Seattle comp or something like that. I think that's fine.
Yeah, makes sense.
Anything else before we get out of here? I know we didn't cover everything, but we will be back tomorrow night, generally covering a different subject tomorrow night, but we can hit, you know, anything that we missed, we can talk tomorrow too.
Aaron Jones looked great, but there's the injuries, so that's going to be a situation.
Jordan Love, I know it was
Jordan
the Bears,
Love looked good,
but Jordan Love looked really good.
Jordan Love looked good. The Bears looked awful, like very bad. Yeah, the AJ Dillon thing's interesting, like from a personal perspective, because I have a lot of him based on the way I was drafting teams.
Mm-hmm.
So interested to see, did he look great? No, but he's going to get a lot of work if Aaron Jones isn't there. So that'll be an interesting one. I don't know. The Bears can't be as bad as they were yesterday. They have to be better than that.
You want to know what's funny about the Bears? All summer, what was the thing about Fields and DJ Moore? Can't draft them. They don't throw, right? They don't throw the ball. They barely fucking ran. Nobody had more than 9 carries, I believe, yesterday. And guess what? DJ Moore didn't get there. DJ Moore had two catches. It's like, well, the thesis didn't take into account that they were going to throw 40 times actually in week 1. It was just, we can't draft them because they don't throw.
Draft them together. Can't draft them apart.
How dare you draft Justin Fields without DJ Moore or vice versa? God forbid. Yeah. It's funny. 1 week again. I'm not worried about Fields, DJ Moore for fantasy. Not yet. No. But we'll see how that one goes.
Justin Jefferson's going to set the NFL record for receiving yards this year.
Oh, him and Tyreek are going to be duking it out. That's for sure.
I think Jefferson's going to take it. I just think it's going to be him getting 130 to 150 almost every single week.
I'll take Tyreek versus Jefferson.
Most yards.
I'll take most yards, most receiving yards. But injury, you know, if one of them gets hurt, I don't want us to, we don't have to pay if somebody gets hurt. But whatever, we can come up with something. I'll take Tyreek. We'll figure it out, and tomorrow night we'll come up with what our bet is. I'll take Tyreek. You take Justin Jefferson. If we missed anything, any questions, whatever, please, tomorrow night we'll be back every Monday and every Tuesday at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Eastern. We will be here. And then we'll get a little bit of a show schedule. We got NBA best ball coming. We got MLB playoff best ball. We're going to have in-season best ball coming and NFL playoff best ball. So we got you covered for all that stuff here coming up shortly. But we'll get that scheduled, ironed out here very quickly. But for Rob and for myself and for my dogs and for whatever the hell is going on outside my house, we'll see you guys tomorrow night. Peace.
1, lift off.
Those were some spicy takes. Want to stay up to date with all of the other spicy takes we're going to have over here at Spike Week? Why don't you press that subscribe button below? You turn notifications on, we draft a team, boom, you know about it. We have another spicy take, boom, you know about it. You can be there. You can draft with us. You want to stay up to date? That's how you do it. All right, we'll catch you later next time here at Spike Week.